Hello there. Today I'm taking a look at a classic red Burgundy, Nuits-Saint-Georges. The producer here is somebody called David Duband, the vintage 2019. And people seem to have been referring to David Duband as a new rising star in Burgundy for quite a number of years now. So I think we're probably safe to say that actually he's arrived and is in fact a respected producer. David's estate is actually based in a place called Chevannes, which is slightly off the beaten track in the Côte de Nuits, so the set of hills that sit to the north behind Côte de Nuits. And the estate was established there back in 1963 by David's father Pierre. At that stage they were simply selling wine to negociants for blending and bottling. They didn't release any wines under their own name. But in 1991, at a relatively young age, David took over the domain, and one of the first things that he did was to ensure that their wines were sold under their name. Since 1991, David has done an awful lot to expand and improve the domain. So, for instance, he's moved towards organic growing. So in 2006, they were certified as organic for all their vineyards. They now have 17 hectares of vines, and they make wines from 23 of Burgundy's most prestigious appellations. And David's been helped in this by a financial backer, somebody called Francois Foyet. And with Francois' help and financial assistance, in 2005, David was able to buy most of the vineyards that had belonged to a prestigious domain, Domaine Chambertin. Its owner, Jacques Chambertin, decided to retire. Domaine Chambertin had a lot of very well recognised Grand Cru sites in places like Morey-Saint-Denis. David's approach, as well as being organic, is to use natural yeasts where possible, to foot tread, so it's quite a traditional approach. He will leave quite a large proportion of whole bunches in his ferment. He uses as low a sulphur treatments as possible in the winery, and uses a relatively low proportion of new oak when aging his wines. So as I say, for this wine the fruit is hand picked. Somewhere in the region of 20% of the fruit was destemmed, the remaining 80% stayed as whole bunches into the fermenting vats. So what this did was it obviously introduces the flavours and the tannins that the stems of the grape will provide, but it means that the berries were going in as whole berries. So that slows up the fermentation because there's less grape sugar accessible to the yeasts at first. So as the fermentation goes on, the berries will gently split, and that feeds the fermentation to allow it to go on for a longer period. The stems also bring a certain amount of oxygen into the ferment with them, and that helps to feed the ferment as well. So you get quite a long, regular fermentation in this situation. David will allow a 17-day cuvation, during which period they reckon to do about somewhere between 5 and 7 pigeages, so actually getting into the vat and foot treading the cap of skins that's formed back into the wine to improve extraction there. They'll also do a small number of pump overs as well, pumping juice or wine from the bottom of the vat and back over the top, over the skins, to extract colour, flavour and tannin from those. Once the wine is pressed, it goes into vat for 2 weeks of settling. It's then put into barrel. Now what's used here are French oak barriques, probably about 40% of which are new, and the balance will be first, second or third fill. So these are 228 litre French oak barriques. The wine stays in barrel for 14 months, so with its fine lees. At the end of this period, it's racked off into vat, where it'll stay for a further 3 months, just to unify it prior to bottle. When the wines are bottled, this is done so without any fining or filtration, and that's with the idea of trying to preserve as much of the fruit's delicate aromas as possible into the bottle. So let's have a look at the wine, shall we? Looking at it, it seems like a dark ruby red, but actually its depth is nothing more than medium. I can see through it quite easily there. The wine has 12.8% alcohol, so not particularly high. Swirling it, it does actually quite readily form legs on the glass there, and those tears running down, showing it's got a fair viscosity to it. So let's see what we make of the aroma, shall we? The aromas are a little bit restrained. You've got an underlying rich red plummy fruit, but then the contribution of the stems in there is to give a spiciness that overlays that. Perhaps there are developed, slightly earthy, slightly forest floral notes. And then there are notes of chocolatiness and coffee, perhaps a touch of vanilla. Reasonably complex, but as I say, just a little bit, the fruit just seems a little restrained at the moment. So let's have a taste. There's a lovely ripeness to the fruit. There's good freshness, and then there's a real, and it is classic for Nuits-Saint-Georges, sort of an earthy texture. There's beautiful, lifted, perfumed, red strawberry, red raspberry notes to the fruit there on the attack. But under that there is this sort of very fine, I guess it's a touch of tannic grip, but as I say, this sort of quite pure earthiness with these delicate perfumed fruits over the top. The wine is at best a mid-weight. There is a structure, but it's very, very fine. I mean, the tannic structure on Pinot Noir can be incredibly fine, and that's what we're seeing here, a really lovely, elegant, velvety, smooth structure. And the acidity is allowing there to be a lovely long finish. It's a very delicate, very refined, really quite sort of self-assured finish. You get the feeling that the wine is probably a touch brooding at the moment and will open out with a bit of time, but it has a mellowness and a harmony that's very, very attractive. The finish has that freshness, it's lovely and clean, it's enduring really well. There are some really clean red raspberry to red cherry fruits. They've got a concentrated note, they're juicy, they're lifted, they're quite pure. There's a slight chocolatey note from the sort of the mid palate through to the end of the finish that's very attractive indeed. I mean, this is a wine that has effortless beauty. I would probably suggest that it's best consumed in 3 or 4 years' time. Would almost certainly age for another 8 to 10 years, but probably wouldn't age much beyond that, to be honest, because it's light, it's delicate. I don't see it having sort of a concentration and a weightiness, particularly with its sort of slightly lower alcohol at 12.8% for very long aging, but I don't think it needs it because it's so harmonious and enjoyable to drink now. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the tasting. If you have, do please press the like button. Do consider signing up and following us on YouTube. It would be fantastic to have your support. Any feedback you have for us, please leave that in the box below. We'd love to hear your comments about the wines, the tastings, or anything else related to that. Most importantly, however, do please try and join us for another tasting in the very near future, won't you? Thanks again. Bye for now.